Okay. So Site 27 Campaign Diary. This is Mission 3 isn't completely done, but there's effectively just like a small wrap-up session where, I might discuss that next time because like when I do the Mission 4 Campaign Diary, or if something particularly interesting happens, maybe I'll make an addendum to this video. But point is, uh, had two sessions, so a lot of stuff has gone on. This last campaign diary I recorded in the middle of November somewhere. Um, a lot of stuff happened that I'm not going to get into, and since then we've had two sessions, one on Christmas Eve and one this past Sunday, which was like February 3rd, 4th, 5th. Yeah, I think it's February 5th. So, I mean, I'm uploading this now. I don't know when the actual campaign VODs are getting uploaded, if they ever are. I don't know when we're doing that. So it, if that ever happens, then this is useless information. But point is, we've had the two sessions since then, and I brought in at the end of that last session, I brought in Jordan Powell, who and that was a great session, like a good introduction. The player jived with everybody pretty well. The character jived. Everything was great. And then he started kind of ghosted the next two sessions for reasons that may or may not be valid, but that's how these things go. So I had to effectively write the character out for a short time, and I intended it to be one session, but it can continue on as if it were more. It's kind of not that important, but so because I wrote the character to have a connection with SCP-738. I just had it so that the character disappeared, and 738 needed something from him for a little bit, and that was kind of it. So that's what happened. Uh, so he just kind of disappeared for both of these sessions. It was supposed to be just the one, like I said, but that is what it is. So, first session, which was on Christmas Eve, what exactly happened? So, they okay, now I remember exactly what happened. So they're walking along, they're talking, and Jordan Powell disappears. So they're like, "Oh, that's odd." Okay. They can't really. Little metagamey. The players know that the other player is missing for this session, so they don't have to like try too hard. And funnily, this is something that came up in another game. Um, one player was playing two characters at once, which is difficult. They were playing two characters, and after a few sessions, they decided they really didn't want to do that anymore. So they told the DM that they wanted to retire that second character. So like okay, so we just had him kidnapped and killed over a long rest. We were sleeping and the character just like got killed. So we started investigating because you want these things to actually make sense. It's not like the character just disappeared. There has to be a reason. So we started investigating it as if the character disappeared, especially because the player wasn't telling us anything. They weren't telling us like one way or the other. So we started investigating this. And we all kind of called it right away, like, hey, if you wanted this, if you were done playing this character, let us know so we'll stop looking. And they kind of like didn't really come out and say it for a little while, for like a minute or two. So we started to investigate, like, okay, I guess we got to spend resources and try to find this character and go out in the middle of the night and start fighting things. But they eventually told, like, yeah, okay, I just didn't want to play this character. Oh, okay, you should have told us that sooner. But that's the type of meta gamey thing that you need to kind of do. Otherwise, like, there's no reason for the party members to not look for the missing character. But regardless, so that character was is Jordan Powell is gone for now. I don't. I have no idea if he's coming back because, like, one, I put him in the camp. I offered to let him join the campaign because he was really interested, and this player or this character's player is really unsure if they're going to be coming back. So that's a whole thing. Um, quick text. So, I mean, I'm gonna invite him back, but if he keeps if we set up a session and he ghosts me one more time, he's just out of the campaign. I'm done. I'm not gonna keep doing this. Like, because each time I've sent him messages like 2 days in advance. Um, so so point is, they continue on without this character, and they roll on the table, and they get a pretty interesting result is which was actually a story beat that I was considering just putting in there. Like it was just going to be something they came across, but I decided to put it on the roll table instead. And they came across a member of the Hunter's Black Lodge. Or was that at the very. Now I can't remember if that was like at the very end of. Wait, yeah, that was it. That was at the very end of the fourth session, which I think is part of like I've already gone over this, but okay, I'll summarize. So they go over this, or they find this character, they eventually decide to free him and take him with them, and then while they're walking, then Jordan disappears, and this new character Yurkov points it out, like, hey, didn't you have another guy with you? What happened to him? So then they're walking a little bit, they're investigating, they're I think talking a little. I don't know if anything else happened. Oh yeah, because number four was a really short session. It was only like 2.5 hours. So we do that. The characters walking along, they're talking to Yurkov a little more, getting to know him a little bit, having some back and forth. Then they come across some of the barracks in the site, and in particular, they're walking along. There's not a lot of activity, but then when they get over to what is Gersh's room, is there's a lot of activity. There's some ransacking going on, and a fight breaks out. There are five of the mirror face, which now that the players have played that session, it's a pauldron unit, a specific type, a specific organization, or a specific unit type from an organization. That's all they really know so far. They got some little information that the Chaos Insurgency is involved, but not a whole lot else right now. They do have one of these guys locked up. Anyway, so a fight breaks out at Gersh's room. These guys were ransacking Gersh's room specifically. That's weird. So a fight happens. It goes back and forth. They see what Yurkov can do, and he is, for D&D understanding, he is a beast barbarian subclass. He turns into a monster. Um, but he is kind of fulfilling the role of Carson because Carson was their main frontliner that could absorb some damage. Um, so now I gave them effectively a barbarian dude that kind of does the same thing. He's a big threatening target. I'll probably give him. He doesn't do as much damage as a normal player class barbarian would do because he only has one attack. It does a little more damage than normal, but he still only has that one attack, and that's it. So he does a little less damage overall, but he's tankier. The players don't have to worry about him, and he's got some other like support abilities, because especially any um, NPC that helps the party, I'm going to have them be effectively a more support role. Um, and there's a lot of ways to do that, but this party is relatively frail. I mean, we've got a bard an artificer, a rogue, a sorcerer that wasn't there, and a cleric. The cleric is perfectly tanky. The bard has the tough feat, and these guys have decent con, but still, they're not like their AC isn't super high. Besides the cleric, and their HP is okay, but still. So they've got this guy that can kind of tank some stuff. A fight occurred. I mean, I'm not going to give you like the greatest hits from this fight. It's what really happened. It's a fight. It was closer quarters, so the party did a decent job of restricting these guys' movement, and they had a hard time getting out of the room to engage with the party. But during the fight, they pulled out some abilities, like they could push the party around. They had like effectively a cone that was like Thunder Wave. The Thunder Wave spell, like the thunder damage, con save, be pushed back, that kind of stuff. They had one or two other little abilities. They had like a parry ability, and these were abilities that like I kind of had an idea of what I wanted them to do, but these guys are really technologically focused. So they've got like a bunch of components that they can refigure into different weaponry and abilities on the fly, which just means I can make shit up as far as what the monster stat block can actually do. So whatever the situation calls for, they can kind of whip something up. These are like artificer enemies, which sort of didn't come through super well before, but I kind of put that together towards the end, and especially there was a fight with more of them. These guys will show up again in the future, and like in other spots in the campaign. But yeah. So what else happened? Then there was a little beat where Gersh asked them like, "Why are you in my room?" And then there was some recognition there, that like, "Oh, this is your room. We just know which room to search." Like, some realization there, and they held on to Gersh a little bit, but then they got killed. So, you know, that was a thing. Um, so that fight occurred, and then there was some like little wrap up. They were like going over some stuff, like putting the bodies around and seeing what they had on them, and thinking a bit, and then that session ended. But then the next session, which was this past Sunday, which was much longer, this one was like a 5 hour session. Um, and the way this one was structured, it started the same. There was a little back and forth with Yurkov. They talked a little bit. And now Yurkov really felt, because he bled with them, and Laszlo actually went down in that fight. So there's a little bit of kinship now. This is how Yurkov works. He's a soldier and a hunter. And that's kind of it. These are the things he cares about. So, um, there's a little bit of building kinship there. He's already seen some stuff now. Um, because in his time in the Hunter's Black Lodge, he's only seen so much. He's seen Sarkic related anomalies, and that's it. And now he's seeing a lot more. So, but starts off, they roll one more time on the table, and here I gave them a choice. And I'm actually going to pull up the encounter tables that I used here, just to show you, just to show the posterity and go over them a little bit. But the point is, I ended up truncating them a little bit because um, they rolled several times on this D20, on the D20 version of the table, and there was a lot of selections missing now, which meant they had to re-roll. And then they kept doing it, and there was like 4 re-rolls in a row. So I was like, okay, no, I'm truncating this down to a D12, and I gave them a choice. They could either roll on the full D12 table, and technically there are much worse odds. In particular, this one. Number one, if they roll a 1, the party catches the attention of something. Roll an additional 1d12 on the lower table, which was a possibility the whole time. It's just they never rolled a 1. So the fact that they're both d12s means nothing. So that would have meant this table comes into effect, and there are some nasty things on this table. You might notice this one, 106, starts to follow them around. Now, one of the things going on here is I have tons of different SCPs on this, and I don't know if these would all be at the same site, but the thing is, none of these are actually at the current site until they roll it. You know what I mean? Game mechanically, narratively, pataphysically, if it were. Um, so the fact that they never rolled on this table and got 106, that means 106 probably isn't at site 27. But all of these are pretty nasty, and I'll go over them right now because I know everybody that like not everybody's familiar with SCP, but 106 is an old like it looks like an old man, but it's like a consummate predator. It can phase through walls, it corrodes everything with a touch, and it can create portals to its this little pocket dimension where it's basically God. It also can't really. It's also like effectively unkillable. Like it just like damage doesn't slow it down, or it's not really like affected by damage, that kind of thing. 213 is the antimatter parasite. It's just like a dude that has this antimatter parasite in its body that can like destroy matter. It would have been a cool fight with just like a really powerful explosive dude. He'd like blow people up, and its HP would have been like whenever they shoot it, it uses its powers to like destroy the bullets before it gets hit. So but the thing is, it has like limited use of its powers, so eventually it would have been fallen unconscious and they could return it to containment. Um, because if they were to actually try to kill it, then like the parasite goes like nuclear and destroys everything. Um, 1000 is a Bigfoot instance, which is would have been really interesting. Um, if they got that one, they would have effectively they would have had to like roll on the table, see what they know, or roll a SCP check, see what they know. Then, if they learn enough about it, I'll make a con save to avoid the instant death effect. Um, and then it really just wants to like kind of get out. That's all. It doesn't want to fight. It wants to get out. This one would have been fun. It's just a pack of things that would have lured the party in and then tried to kill them. 1788 is a super weird one. They're adults. They're like four-armed, obese humans. They look obese. It's actually like all muscle, which is really strange. They've got like metal on their skulls, and they've got extra arms. They're really weird. But they're like evolved humans. They're like the real adult form of humanity. It's a whole thing. The Wendigo skull would have been interesting. This was actually the first SCP I considered using for this campaign. It would have just been like they have to go contain the Wendigo skull, and it would have just been a fight with a Wendigo. Um, this one would have been like a relatively straightforward fight, but depending on what's going on around it, it can eat corpses and get new temporary new abilities. Kind of a remix of like the Dread Claw, which was a monster I made for another campaign a little bit. 215 is an Allosaurus skeleton. That would have been funny. They're fighting a giant dinosaur skeleton. Nothing else going on there. 1155 is the predatory street art. It's graffiti on the wall that fights you. It would have been fun. They could have used that to their advantage if they like if this were to show up like early in the session or early in the mission. They could get this thing to chase them, and then if they fight some insurgents, um, they can use it to their advantage. Number 9 is a bunch of animals, which they'd have to roll again to see exactly what they fight, but there are a bunch of animals that use martial arts. Really funny. This one would have been cool. I'm definitely going to have this like show up some other point. It's like an invisible stalking entity that just follows you after a while and it attacks you, but it's invisible to everyone else. Um, these would have been cool. This would have been like a weird gimmick fight because they're two creatures that have a bright headlight on their face that shines light, and they fight in pairs, or they hunt in pairs, and they look like a car. So there would have been this long corridor they're in, and these things make passes at them, and they have to like fight it with readied actions only. This one would have been like the big story hook one. It's this wolf that sits at a crossroads, and then when it looks at you, if you meet its gaze, a year from now, you or one of member of your family dies. So this would have been a curse that they would have to like they'd have a year to try to lift. That would have been, that'd be story making stuff. Definitely something worth stealing for like a normal D&D campaign. But let's go over these a little bit. I can fix that. So the coffee machine, they can request weird liquids. That's pretty simple. This is a little fight. This one, because it's low on the table, this one puts the party on the back foot. They get ambushed generally, and it's going to be set up that these insurgents are like encamped. They've got like advantage on stealth rolls, everything. So, um, you know, it's going to be really difficult for them to not be on the back foot, and they might have to give up some information first before the fight. But that didn't happen. This is just the 939, the same thing as on the stalking table, but it's just out here, and the setup's a little different. This would be there'd be less of them than with the stalking table. This is one they did talked about it in the previous one. This one is very similar to the one they got with the little Dracula, the little vampire. But this one, it would have been inside there is a super weird weapon. And so if you've never read this SCP, go read it. It's great. It's a really great old one. But like it's some kind of weapon that does like really weird shit. Like you fired at someone and now they can't die. So they're just screaming in pain from all the bullet wounds they have. Like all this, like it's horrible. But they would have gotten a hold of something like that. This one is another story hook one. Um, would have been really interesting, but it would have taken been like a 10-15 minute interaction, like real time. So they just talk to this guy and he can't help them, so they were just like, all right, this one they got, all these they got. Kind of forgot about the iPods, but it's whatever. This one would have just been like another combat encounter, but they work with another Foundation squad, so they would have had more NPCs. This one would have been similar to this, but instead of fighting human enemies, they would have been fighting a giant skeleton that's on fire. This one would have been like a more narrative one. This one is a young woman that can see, or that only sees people's skeletons. Like she doesn't see their actual bodies; she just sees their bones. Um, and like for a while, like it was this progressive thing where she slowly saw like more and more people's bones only, and then at some point, like a switch flipped, and she only saw bones. But um, like this would have been bad because if someone looks normal, that's really bad for a few reasons. But I'm not going to spoil the article if you want to read it. This one would have just been like a task they have to do. But you know, this is what I didn't tell you to do anything. So this one is the one they got. And I'll go over it in a minute. This one is one they already did get, but I put it back in there because it's just like health and restock stuff. Um, this one they got Yurkov, Sarky Vampire, the Improver, and 738, my favorite. That was so good. So this one was set up so that they could encounter more. And yeah, I think I actually cut it down from 2 Pauldron soldiers to 1 just because it was like that just felt better, I guess. It was one of those like spur of the moment decisions you can't really explain. But they came across a Pauldron unit who had like most of his limbs missing, and one infantry guy that was like trying to patch him up, and he's all fucked up too. But they get them, they cast Charm Person on the guy and get him to cooperate, and they patch him up, and they patch the Pauldron unit up. They tie them up and restrain them, and then they're right outside of the soup room. 348, right? I think that's the right number. I'm not gonna look it up right now, but yeah, 348. Um, this is soup from Dad. It is a soup that has nourishing and restorative properties, and you tend to get a message from your father at the end. And depending on your relationship with your father, like if it's a really bad relationship, then the soup is like salty and it burns. But if you have a really good relationship with your father, the soup's great. That kind of thing. So this was a little bit of a character building exercise. Everybody sat down, had some soup, and I know normally there's only one bowl, but these are like replicas that have the same properties. So everybody, is that a magnet? Oh, that's magnetic. Interesting. So everybody sat down and I had them describe what kind of soup they got because they could put any soup they want in it and what their character's relationship was with their father. Simple. And I got some good results. Gersh had a good relationship with his father. His father was stern, older, stern military type father, but ultimately well meaning and did a decent job. So Gersh's soup wasn't amazing, but the message was kind of like the big part, like the main juice, we'll say, of this. And like, they felt really, what was the word the player used? Yeah, satisfied. Um, that was Gersh. Then Daly also had a great relationship with her father. They apparently do science projects all the time or research projects. And her message was, or I'll go over the messages real quick. Her message was something like, "I'm proud of you. I can't wait for the next thing we work on." Something like that. So they like those two interactions were great. And Gersh's message was like, "I'm proud of you. Keep keep up the good work." Something like that. Something really reaffirming. Um, so those two got really good messages, and they had a positive experience. But these two did not have good messages. Bryce's father is the typical wealthy, super wealthy father that doesn't really pay much attention to their son. So his message was something like, "Why are you wasting your time?" in reference to like all the internet stuff that he's doing, like all that stuff. So his soup was kind of salty. Yurkov, their NPC, he got a message. I didn't exactly reveal what his message was, but the thing was, he killed his father at some point in his past, so his message was not great, and his soup ended up being very salty at the end. Um, so he wasn't happy. And then Laszlo's, he got a message something like, "What have you done? What happened to?" Then it cuts off, and all the little alphabet soup letters are like degraded and burned. Because, one, Laszlo never knew his father, and in this new timeline, his mother no longer exists. So there's some connectivity there, and his soup not only was salty, but it actually burned him. Laszlo is not having a good time. So there was a little talk there, and then they previously got instructions to come back to the quantum meeting room to escort the site director to the main security control so they could lift the lockdown because pretty much everything was swept. After the soup room, they call back Graham, and I gave them some prompting here, but sometimes that's what you have to do. You just have to give them a little prompting. My headset turned off. It's because it's not actively playing anything. Like, it doesn't notice that I'm recording. So, anyway, give him a little prompting. Sometimes you got to do that. And when they called Graham, he did not answer. So they rushed back to the room, to the quantum meeting room. The doors are closed. The lights are flashing. The door is locked. So they get Yurkov to rip the door open. And now I did something here that I feel like DMs in general should do a bit more with barbarians. Let them use rage outside of combat. Like either like you could do that in two ways. Give them the ability like a few times a day to use rage in like a short burst. Like they get narrative uses of rage and they can enter rage for like an interaction or two, something like that. Or especially as the DM, if you know combat is like gonna start soon, they want to rage like for a narrative thing or a skill check thing, something like that. Let them rage and let it carry through to the combat that's going to happen. That way, like your barbarian kind of has more to do in outside of combat. Um, but they break in. Graham and Werner are on the ground. Graham is injured but awake. Werner is unconscious. So they prop him up. They check Werner. They make sure they're stable. They patch Graham up a little bit. He starts getting the quantum communicator back together because that got like busted or something. He told them that a squad of Pauldron units came in, killed the security, and took the site director hostage. So there were the dead guards and there were some dead Pauldron units in that room. So they had evidence of it. So they go in and they gotta go. They get told that the Pauldron unit is waiting in the meeting room. So they go in. They have a very very brief hostage negotiation moment, and the site director he's got this weird mechanical collar on that's obviously bad. He's like they learn he's being like tortured in there. Uh, but what this Pauldron commander wants is he wants um, what do you call it? He wants them to start the meeting, and you need credentials and the so this was one of those things that's like, okay, I want this to kind of happen, but the way I've set it up, there's no reason for the enemies to wait for the party to get there. Well, okay, he needs credentials to start it, and the site director's credentials got destroyed, or maybe the site director broke them before Pauldron could get a hold of them or something. You know, um, we'll find out exactly what happened next on the wrap-up session. But point is, they need to wait for the party, and these are the things you kind of like find a solution to as a DM sometimes. So he wants a meeting to start, and some of his colleagues are supposed to be on the other end, having attacked the other site at the same time. So the party doesn't see a way around this either. They don't fight this. They don't try to argue or get him to do something else. I don't know how much it was that the players like knew, like, I want you guys to do the quantum meeting room or they want to see it again, or they just legitimately couldn't figure out a way out of it, which all of those are fine. But it happens, they start the meeting up, they get cut off from reality again, and instead of a bunch of Pauldron units on the other side, there is a huge reptilian creature waiting on the other side of the viewing glass. Probably one of the worst things I could ever see, SCP-682. Now, I've wanted to use 682 for a while. This was also one of the first things I thought of. But how do you have a party, especially a level 7 party? That's not super powerful. How do you have them go up against something like 682? like a borderline un or not borderline, an unkillable monster that adapts to everything and is so incredibly powerful. Gee, I don't know. So I put them up I set up this situation so that they don't have to directly fight it. They just have to deal with it. And the way it was designed was simply the quantum meeting room is set up with anomalous technology, kind of, but it's still an effect. There's a quantum entanglement effect going on, and 682 could theoretically adapt to it and use it and do anything he wants with it. Whether that means like he'll rip through the glass, who knows? But he could easily adapt to it because it's just an obstacle to his survival. So the party would have to split his attention and prevent him from. Um, I keep saying him. It's supposed to be it. Like him gets used a lot for 682. It's pretty explicitly male, but he, it, whatever. Um, so they do a really good job. Like I have a loose initiative structure. It's basically the party goes, um, the pauldron goes, then 682 goes. Like there's no initiative rolls. Like it's just round around, and then I like padded out the rounds to like 10 seconds instead of 6. I'm not sure that was like a great decision, but it was a decision. It made time move a little faster because this isn't combat, so it was kind of whatever. But it took about like 4 or 5 rounds total. Something, maybe 6. I can't remember exactly. This was the majority of the session. But the players did a great job of figuring out things to do. They all just did something each turn. Um, they um, they got the site director free, and then he could do some stuff. They interrogated the Pauldron unit. Most of them got over the fear effect pretty quickly. Laszlo never got over the fear effect from 682, which is just like, it's not a magical effect, it's just fear. Like pure dread just from what this thing is. Um, the Artificer hacked the security terminal. Um, just, gotta hack it because it's set in like a current mode, so she has to get in and like forcibly change it to something else to end the meeting early because otherwise the meeting was set to like 5 minutes. So they have to try to end it as soon as they can so that 682 doesn't get through and devour them all. So, um, but overall they do a really good job of like figuring out things to do and ways to distract it, to gather its attention and keep it interested. They have some cool interactions with it. One of the players like makes like a big jump, and this is one of the more creative players that like tries really off the wall shit that I'm always happy for. He tries to use this homebrew cantrip called wardrobe malfunction, which it's just supposed to like pop somebody's clothes off, which depending on how you rule that is extremely powerful for a cantrip. Like if you can pop off somebody's plate armor at a cantrip with a cantrip at like 60 feet away, that's not cantrip level. So instead, it would just be like, depending on what you do, if you try to use it on somebody's armor, it's like, okay, a few buckles come off and they have to like spend an attack to do that or spend some movement to fix them, something like that. So it can harass a target, but it can't like just remove their armor. And I still have them make like spell attack rolls or saving throws. But he tries to reason that the adaptations that 682 utilizes are like its armor, like its clothes, and therefore is applicable for wardrobe malfunctions. It's like, you know what? What? Did all my screens just turn off? Okay, yeah, that's what happened. Every once in a while, my graphics card like hiccups. Or no, wait, did my okay, no. It was like screensaver. That's what it was. Because recording doesn't count. I never okay, this is probably my longest like recorded video. I'll say that. So, he tries to reason for this and I give him like, "Okay, just make a Hume saving throw to see if you can affect bend reality to make this make sense." He rolls a 1. So, he has to hit his own AC. I give him advantage with a spell attack roll. It works. So he strips off all of his equipment, not just his clothes, his armor, his weapons, his gear, everything. So he spends the rest of this encounter naked, which is really funny. But the players manage to they start they try to they manage to start the shutdown, which will happen within 3 rounds. I can't just have it happen immediately. So there's a shutdown process that will take 30 seconds, and they have to keep 682 occupied for that amount of time, and then it starts doing something. It puts its mouth against the glass, and this whole time I'm describing how it's transforming the claws emerging, the teeth, the eyes, the tendrils, all these things. So um, it puts its mouth up against the glass, and its throat, like down its throat, starts glowing. So it's doing something. So they have to like try a little harder to distract it, and they manage to weaken it, distract it enough that it can't do this early and it can't do it super powerfully. But at the end, it tries to suck everybody through. And then I give them a turn to do a thing, and then they still have their reaction, which is the only reason Daly survived. So effectively, I kind of gave them 2 reactions. Everybody does a few things. Bryce, Trey Cool teleports away, weakening the like vacuum effect, so the saving throw is easier. Like so, the DC is easier for him. Gersh puts down a what's effectively the silence spell, but per our reflavoring of stuff, it's like a reality tether. So it just makes it easier to resist anomalous effects. So everybody gets advantage on this following strength save. Laszlo casts Shield, which he's just going to use a resource, so he gets a bonus to his saving throw. And then Dr. Daly uses their custom item, which is SCP-6963, or is it the rat phone? What is it? 6369, the rat phone. Yeah. They use that. They can cast Mage Hand, but it looks like a rat, to help them, and so they get a little rat like holding their foot. So I just give them a bonus equal to their intelligence mod on their saving throw. Then they roll terribly with advantage. They use their inspiration, still don't roll great. And then they finally use Flash of Genius, which, Flash of Genius is the type of thing you have to use before you make the saving throw, but this player, like, isn't super on the ball with all the things they have, all their features. So it's kind of whatever. Just let them do it. So they manage to make the save and they survive. Yurkov, who has been in this weird bestial fight or flight mode, seeing something like 682, he makes his saving throw. Um, yeah, and he has not been having a good time. Yurkov, it's going to be a whole thing that like plays into his like loyalty now. He also didn't die. Monk makes his saving throw pretty easily, actually. Like I think he rolled like a 19 and an 18 on with advantage. So, but the only one that failed was the Pauldron unit, who was outside this silence effect. So he got pulled through and killed pretty quickly. But then right after that, the room cut off and everything faded. So there you go. It was something I was really looking forward to using for a long time. Having like setting them up against something like 682. Um, without making them directly fight it. And I think it worked out really well. But like I said, there's just like this little wrap up coming up, and something that ended up happening. Director Monk, he um, he ended up like activating like a bunch of magic rings that he has, and he got a bunch of like magic circles and shit around his arm, and he punched 682 through the quantum entanglement, made his Hume saving throw to affect reality, and punch him through the quantum shit. Um, so that was cool. And then players made the connection. Oh, is that why you named him Monk? It's like, no, I just named him Monk because it sounded like a good name, and then I gave him a punchy thing. I guess he's a monk now. Because that was just some kind of effect that I thought made sense for a site director to have. You know, a lot of site directors will have like various anomalous or magical things, like items that let them do things. You know, they might have like a magic sword that does something. You know, who knows what they have? Like varieties, like personnel can have a variety of anomalous items, but it's just kind of it's one of those things that just kind of like converge together. Like I guess he's a monk. But that was also something. As soon as 682 got punched, he then, like I described, the magic rings like go through this window without breaking it, punching 682 in the face, who then clamped down back on the magic rings and stole it from him, and then used it and punched Laszlo really hard, um, who I think was naked at this point, which is hilarious. He got punched naked, but because like Laszlo was the one that like most directly tried to harm it. But there's a few little details here and there. Um, Laszlo did try to come up with information. Like, is there anything useful? Because he has this connection where like he researched the Egyptian demon. I think it's a demon, Amet, the Devourer of the Dead, and that's what he thinks 682 is. And that's a popular fan theory. So he did some knowledge checks to see if he knows anything useful, and he got a quick prayer, but he didn't get the whole thing. So he didn't get the whole thing. So because he had like the fragmented version of this prayer, it wasn't useful, and 682 didn't even seem to recognize it. And while a big part of that was because I kind of forgot, you know, those are the types of things you miss these things as a DM, but it wouldn't have done much if I remembered it. Um, it would have been like 682 like glances at him and is like, "You don't really know what you're saying, do you?" Something like that. Um, but there'll be more to dig in there a bit later, and all I can say is this is not the last time they'll see 682. Um, so there's this little wrap up to do, and that's kind of it. I'm really happy my player. I'm kind of like I'm proud of my players. They did a really good job. So, yeah, this is getting uploaded straight away.